Hi everyone, it's Andrea here. I'm founder of Inspirico. Those that do not know, Inspirico is a vegan health startup and we are doing functional foods and nutritional supplements for women. And today my honor is to welcome Serena here.
Hi everyone.
Yes, Serena is a wellness coach, she's a plant-based nutritional consultant. She's also the founder of Whole Shift Wellness, which is a business that is helping busy and time-pressed professionals to achieve their healthiest, fittest and most confident selves, like through creating bespoke programs for them. And Serena, I know that you have experience in helping people to achieve weight loss, achieve real transformation, and I really want to know what are some of the mistakes that people make and how you can help all the challengers that are watching to achieve that weight loss goal and wellness goals.
That's a brilliant question, and it's very interesting actually that you asked that question, because just now I've been posting a series of blogs on the 7 most common mistakes we see busy professionals make. And we've worked with over 500 professionals across 5 countries in over 20 years of combined experience, myself and my husband. So these mistakes that we've decided to compile into a report transcend age, gender, geography, social status. It was really quite empowering to be able to identify what these stumbling blocks are, which so many people from so many different walks of life actually have in common. Mm-hmm. So for an instance, the single probably most prominent one, which doesn't apply to the guys in the challenge, is that busy professionals know that they need to improve, but they never get started. Mm-hmm. We tend to look at improving our health and well-being as this big mountain that we want to climb. Mm-hmm. But because we never break it down in manageable steps, they feel overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. So therefore, they never take one single step in a new direction. And we all know that in order to achieve new results, you need to do new things. So that's what the guys in the challenge are doing right now. They've already taken one very powerful step in a new direction, mm-hmm. which will inevitably transform the course of their lives. Then obviously, depending on what you do with that, mm-hmm. That will determine your rate of progress and what you'll be able to achieve. But many people don't even take a first step. Mm-hmm. That's one of the most common mistakes we see them do. The second most common mistake, actually, is what I call the New Year resolution phase. So actually, once they do decide to do something about it and take action, they change too many things at once. Mm-hmm. They go all in. They decide to transform everything too much, too quick. Mm-hmm. They set up these goals that are actually not sustainable mm-hmm. in the long run, because we all tend to be impatient, and busy professionals, high achievers, tend to be really quite impatient, and I have the same problem. I can be like that. Mm-hmm. But the thing is when you're changing too many things at once, when you're trying to move too fast, when you're trying to skip steps, what you're achieving is not sustainable, permanent transformation. Mm-hmm. You're just making changes. And at some point, sooner or later, the brain will become overwhelmed and it will give up on you. And that's why most New Year resolutions, I think a staggering percentage, like 75%, give up after only 2 weeks. So these are kind of some of the things that we kept seeing reoccurring time and time again. I have the full report. We've compiled it as a report with the 7 most common mistakes, and I'll be glad to share it with you for you to pass on to the guys in the challenge. If not all of them, some of them will most definitely apply to most of you. And just by starting to address these, and because I give tips on how to prevent them, you're already way ahead of the crowd.
That's very insightful, Serena. Thank you.
Sure.
We will definitely take you up on getting the report. I'm sure that it will be very beneficial for our challengers. And I know, Serena, there are so many questions that we have received, and the time is short. I really want to honor your time. So why don't we just dive right into the questions?
Let's do it. So, great questions, by the way. Well done, you guys. I loved it.
So let's start with the simple ones. Natalie has asked, can you give some healthy snack options apart from just nuts and piece of fruit?
Which can get a little bit boring
Yes.
after a while. So there aren't many ready-made snacks that I tend to recommend to our shifters. Mm-hmm. The one brand that is ready-made is like a commercial brand that you find in most store and corner store, which I am actually happy to recommend for them to purchase. Is called Naked mm-hmm. bars. So they are the least processed ready-made snack you can find out there. They have literally 3 or 4 ingredients. and they don't have any added preservatives. It's just dates, nuts, and some natural flavorings. So if you are shifting towards a healthier diet, a whole food, plant-based diet that is as unprocessed as possible, you can eat those without having to worry about additives and preservatives and all that. So naked, by all means, and they're very, very easily found in most shops. Now, if you want to take things to the next level, you can make your own version, and it's something that I do regularly, and I recommend even to our shifters who are not happy to be in the kitchen. Because I have a recipe that I'll be glad to share with you. Essentially, what you want a nut base, whether it's almonds or cashews or whatever your favorite one is. Then you want the dates as like the natural sweetener, and then you can with that base you can kind of take it wherever you want to take it. Some people add a little peanut butter and some chocolate chips. Some people add coconut flakes. You make it in batch, you roll them up into little snack bowls, put them in the fridge. They last easily a week. I don't know past the week because they never last more than a week in my household. But that's also a very practical snack that you can make. And then, get creative with it. I mean, one thing that is very easy and you can put together very quickly, veggies and hummus or any other healthy dips like salsa or homemade bean dips. Or rice cakes with all the dips, or nut butters. That's the kind of stuff that you should always have in your office drawer, in the pantry, in the car, because they're non-perishables. Nut butters are non-perishables. Rice cakes are non-perishables. And you always want to have that to fall back to. And then the last suggestion, which is one of my favorites actually, is I am a big fan of Varvita crackers. They're possibly the only cracker I eat, because again, we go back to the least processed type of snacks that you can get, or even rye bread. And so I do these like open sandwiches where I put like kale and tomatoes, maybe avocados, sun-dried tomatoes, capers for extra flavoring, a sprinkle of nutritional yeast, ready in minutes, super healthy, very nutritious, virtually unprocessed.
That's brilliant. So would you say that the key to this is a little bit of preparation?
Well, minimal, and again, it depends. Are you at the house or are you at the office? If you're at the office, then you really want to be like as practical as you can be. The stuff that you want to keep in the car, you need it to be unperishable. So you kind of want to play it by ear depending on what your specific circumstances are. Now, the preparation there is an element of preparation. You want to go food shopping, you want to make sure that you get this stuff in your weekly shop. And I encourage all our shifters to keep an ongoing shopping list in their phone of all the staples that they know to go back to every week. But see, here's the thing. The first week will be a little bit more challenging. You'd have to think a bit more. You'd have to kind of maybe scout your options a bit more. The second week you'll get better. By the third week, it'll be a no-brainer, So yes, there is an element of initial preparation and trial and error. But don't think that the amount of effort that it takes in the first week will be the amount of effort that it takes for the rest of your life, because it won't. It'll get so easy, it'll be second nature.
Absolutely. That's like very, very helpful. There are many ideas that I will implement in my life. I'm also like one of the snackers that eat healthy, like three meals a day, and then just get some cheeky.
And that's fine. Some people do need it. That's the beauty of eating whole food plant-based, is that actually you can, and in many instances should, be eating more food, because you're eating food that naturally contains less calories and less fat. So go for it.
Yeah, thank you. Let's go to the next question. Millie, I know you are looking for this answer. So Millie has asked, what would be an optimal day-to-day meal plan for a busy athletic woman, so a woman that is working out?
Right. So the first thing that I feel compelled to clarify is that nutrition is not a one-size-fits-all science. So it is really, really important to remember that there are some universal principles which apply to everybody and anybody. And then there's you, and you're different, and you're like nobody else out there. And I see so many people beating themselves up and struggling because they're trying to eat like somebody else in order to achieve the results that they are achieving, and that's not working for them. And in some instances it may work, but it's not a given that it will, because you are different from everybody else. So that's why all our programs are bespoke, and all our approach is very unique from individual, because you will have a different caloric need than I will have, and you will have a different predisposition, and you will have a different ability to hold on to fat, and you were born and brought up in a different country from me, so your body is used to different kind of foods. So I'm gonna share some ideas, but I want you to really remember, all of you, that it is really important to find what works for you. So yes, use the benchmark, use the tools that you've given, and use these ideas to kind of build, to use it as a foundation, but leave some room for flexibility in order to be able to discover what actually works for you individually. With that said, a busy woman who is athletic, so she works out and is active, needs at least 2,400 calories a day. You could have my ideal kind of whole food plant-based meal plan for her would be something like oatmeal in the morning. I don't think you can beat porridge as a breakfast if you're eating whole food plant-based, which you can top with your favorite toppings, whether it's almond butter, fruit. Always make sure you include fruit or vegetables or both in every single one of your meals. For lunch, you could have something like an open sandwich, like I was just talking about, with rye bread and vegetables. Essentially, you want to think of your main meals as a full pot kind of component. So they all need to contain cooked and raw vegetables. It's really important to have a bit of both because of the bioavailability of the nutrients, which changes depending on whether they are cooked or raw. So you get some nutrients from the raw veggies, but then you get some other nutrients that are more bioavailable when the vegetable is cooked. So veggies, both raw and cooked, whole grains of your choice, whatever you like. Brown rice, quinoa, spelt, like the world is your oyster, brown pasta, whole grain pasta and bread, and then legumes. Plant proteins, and that could be tofu, tempeh, beans, chickpeas, anything that you like. And so if you think of your main meals as a combination of these four elements, then you can get creative with it. And that's the same for lunch or dinner. Now, what will vary depending on your level of activity and your metabolism is how much of how big your plate will be. And that's hard to say. There isn't a universal rule for that. And then for snacks, we were talking about snacks, so refer back to the previous answer.
Absolutely. There is kind of a follow-up question which is asked by Deborah, and she wants to know whether you can meet all your nutritional requirements through a diet alone.
I wish I could say yes. The truth of the matter is, you can get really close. The truth of the matter is that our food chain is disrupted. And this is a fact and is a consequence of the modern ways of living. Is that, unfortunately, we don't grow food in organic, untreated soil anymore. Even the most organic crops out there are somewhat treated to some extent, because if they didn't, they wouldn't get enough, to be able to commercialize. So organic is the best you can get, but it's not as good as it would have been back in the days when you were growing your own fruit and veggies, So what I would say is you can get as close as possible, but even if you're eating like I am, an unprocessed whole food plant-based diet, and if you have done so and will continue to do so for the rest of your life, you might need to consider a couple of supplements, and not because the diet is faulty, it's because the food chain is compromised. And so it's virtually impossible in these days to be able to get all the nutrients just from diet. Now, I want to clarify, however, that the opposite is also not true, which is that you can pop a pill and that will do the trick, and you don't need to eat fruit and vegetables because that pill contains your daily vitamins and minerals.
It's complementary.
It's whatever you do needs to be complementary. You need to do your best with food and with nutrition, and then wherever you can't get with food and nutrition, for instance, B12 is not bioavailable. You're never going to get enough B12 if you're whole food plant-based, because, well, it's a long explanation. I don't want to delve into it. So you might need some supplements. You probably are likely to, even if you are eating as close to a perfect diet as you can get. However, supplements are not to be looked at as a substitute for healthy eating in no case whatsoever. And you are never going to be able to get away with a bad diet, no matter how good your supplements are. Because the way nutrition works is not even fully understood by the greatest scientists in the world. The reason why an apple is good for you, we don't fully know. We know some of the reasons, but we don't know all the reasons. We just know that it works, and we've got to eat it. You know, so you can't put an apple into a pill and get the same results.
Right. Can you maybe share briefly what would be the main supplements that people on the vegan plant-based diet would need?
So
Need to consider at least.
So if you've been whole food plant-based for say over 3 years, you need to start looking into supplementing B12 every week. Depending on where you live, you might need to supplement vitamin D, which is actually a hormone produced by your skin through exposure with the sun. But if you don't get enough exposure with the sun, then you're more likely to need a little vitamin D supplement, possibly some omega-3, you know, because you get some of omega-3 from things like nuts and seeds, but there's a difference between short chain and long chain, and so just to be safe, it would probably be a good idea to supplement omega-3. Those three are really the very, very most fundamentals. You can get most of the rest from nutrition. Again, it varies from person to person.
There is a really big myth that vegans lack protein. What is your take? What is your take?
The protein question.
Yeah.
Right. Have you ever met anybody who has a protein deficiency?
No.
I have been doing this for a long time, and I have never occurred to me anybody who is struggling with protein deficiency. So the only way that you might ever incur into a protein deficiency is if you're not eating enough calories. So if you're just not meeting your calorie requirements for the day, then you might not be eating enough protein. But then again, you're not eating enough of anything else either. So if you're not meeting your calorie requirements, then you could incur in a protein deficiency because you're not eating enough. Number one. Number two, you're eating heavily processed foods rather than eating whole food plant-based, which sadly is quite easily done these days because there is a lot of vegan alternatives out there. And don't get me wrong, I love all that stuff, and it's nice to treat yourself every now and then, but that shouldn't be the staples of your diet. We don't need protein to live. We need amino acids, which is the building blocks of protein. Every fruit and vegetable out there contains plenty of the essential amino acids required for you to thrive. I mean, think about where cows get protein from. They get it from grass, you know? And I'm not saying that you should eat like a cow. You're not a cow. That's not what I'm implying. However, literally worrying about protein is the single least important thing you could be doing, because it's the least of your worries. You should not be worrying about protein at all. Do not worry about the protein.
Absolutely.
I mean, we could talk for an hour just about that.
Absolutely. I also believe that you can get your protein through lentils and chickpeas.
Yes, of course. I mean,
all the
even
good
broccoli, 100 calories of broccoli contains more protein than 100 calories of steak.
You see?
So it's like, it's just this myth that we've been kind of we've grown up with, and it's just, I mean, it's a huge
It sells well.
it does
right?
sell quite well. It's just a huge misinformation around. And if you want to read an amazing book actually on the subject, the best book on, probably one of the greatest on nutrition in general, by Dr. Garth Davis, is called Proteinaholic. So get your hands onto that and have a read through, and he explains the ins and outs with way more scientific rigor than I would ever be able to.
Brilliant, thank you.
Sure.
Serena, we as women, we are changing, you know,
Absolutely.
like over time, and Natalie has asked a very important question, and that is, what things are important to include in the diet of kind of premenopausal and menopausal age?
It's a beautiful question, and it's a beautiful topic, and it's important, and I thank you for asking this, because it is the link between regulating your hormones and nutrition is actually major, and you can really help the process of shifting into that stage of your life through eating the right foods. So specifically, there are two things that you want to be mindful of. The first one is calcium. because as we age, women tend to lose some of the calcium. We're more prone than men to losing some of the calcium. And there is this massive misconception around dairy products being the greatest source of calcium, and women needing more dairy as they age in order to be able to make up for this loss and prevent osteoporosis and any other side effects that might come from it. Actually, sadly, dairy is the worst kind of source of calcium out there. And this, I'm going to simplify what is actually quite an intricate process, but what happens when you eat any animal product, including dairy, is that you alter the pH of the blood from alkaline to acidic. And remember that illness faster in acidic pH. That's where bacteria thrive. So the body then wants to counteract this, and it does so by pulling calcium out of your bones to be able to rebalance the pH of your blood. So although you are getting calcium from dairy products, because you're also making your body so acidic, you're losing more than what you're actually getting. And this is why there is a high link between countries that have the highest consumption of dairy products, such as the Scandinavian countries, which also seem to have the highest rate of osteoporosis in women. So this is to say that yes, you do need to be aware of calcium as you age, and in general as a woman.
Where could women get calcium?
Right. The plant sources of calcium are ideal. So green leafy vegetables are number one. They're really the stuff of life. And then nuts and seeds come very close to it. Soy products are really good, and there's this massive, because the other thing is regulating hormones is also very important for women, especially as we age. And there's this huge misconception around soy being bad for you, because it kind of behaves like estrogens in the body, and etc. etc. It gives you man boobs and all sorts of other myths that are absolutely untrue. Actually, soy products, unprocessed soy products, so we go back to the same thing, tofu, tempeh, are an amazing source of calcium, but also help regulate hormones and prevent disruptions, and kind of they allow you to step into that phase more gracefully. But so do things like flax seeds and oats and barley. So yes, those would be my top tips. When consuming foods that are high in calcium, it's really important that you combine them with foods that are high in vitamin C, such as tomatoes or other colored vegetables, because the vitamin C helps you absorb the calcium more effectively. You can sprinkle some lemon juice over your greens, and that's how you maximize the bioavailability of the calcium in the veggies.
Vitamin C also helps with collagen production, so beautifies us.
Absolutely.
Yes, thank you so much, Serena, for sharing that hormonal health is very, very important and often very overlooked.
I can tell you this much. Women, because there's another question coming up about, actually I'm going to wait and hold off because I think there's another question please, and I don't want to disrupt the flow of the questions. But generally speaking, for women, our hormone balance is so delicate and so important to take care of, because your hormones literally regulate every function in the body, every function. And so eating dairy products and eggs, one of the greatest side effects is that you are taking in so much hormones to those products, because think of what dairy is. It's hormone growth liquid for a little calf to turn into a cow, you know, at 4 times the speed that a human grows. So full of hormones. Even the most organic of dairy products will be full of hormones. They're just naturally occurring. Eggs come from the ovary of a chicken, you know.
Yes.
So those are the 2 things that contain the most hormones in all of animal world. And so inevitably they will disrupt your balance. One of the things that has helped my PMS more than anything else has been giving up dairy, for an instance. It has transformed everything and anything. So just a little side note on that.
Yes, absolutely. I'm a perfect example of that as well. As soon as I stopped eating animal products, my hormonal balance went out of whack, but continuing on vegan diet has really brought that balance back.
Exactly.
Has cleared my skin of hormonal acne and has regulated my periods. So really encourage you to stick to whole foods based diet and ditch the dairy, ditch the animal products.
Never look back. Never look back.
Absolutely. So Serena, Maxine has asked a question that we all want an answer for. Why I can't lose weight despite trying every diet out there?
See, the answer to that might just be in the question. Diets don't work. Is the sheer mindset behind dieting is flawed. So think of it this way. A diet is something that you supposedly do for a period of time with the intent of achieving a certain goal, hoping that once you've achieved said goal, you can go off the diet and still maintain the results. And it's not how it works. You know, if you get into dieting mode, you essentially get on a treadmill that you will never get off for the rest of your life. So even those who do achieve results end up entering this cycle of diet on, diet off. That it's and I've been there, and I know how hellish it is. It's terrible. And so the first suggestion that I have is get out of this diet mindset. You need to make small incremental improvements that you can sustain for the rest of your life. And move perhaps slowly than you would like to, but in a sustainable, long-lasting way, in a way that becomes just the way you eat. You know, that's one first important suggestion and distinction. The other thing, you know, is in order to lose weight, and this is basic science, and you can't escape this principle. You basically need to take in less calories than you consume. Nobody can escape this. And this is we go back to the fact that we're all different, we all burn different amount of calories, so you can use a benchmark tool to get a sense of it, but you essentially need to figure out the way to cut down on the amount of food that you consume, and it needs to be a little bit less than what you burn. Until you reach a plateau, and therefore you realize that that's just the way you eat to maintain, or if you need to lose a little bit more, you need to go back and refine and figure out how to improve further. So if you're not losing weight, it simply means that you're not obeying this basic principle. You know, you might be overdoing it when you're treating yourself, or you might not realizing, and actually you might be eating more than you think that you are. It's hard to diagnose, but the two suggestions are: get out of this mindset, think long term, number one, and number two, you know, track your food. You know, do some food logs, do some apps, and really be honest with yourself. It's so easy to cheat yourself and kind of not count that handful of something or that little bit extra of this and that, but actually everything counts. Every little counts. The body counts everything. So I hope this helps.
Yes. I know, Serena, that you have developed this proven methodology that works time and time again.
Yes.
Maybe you can share just briefly, you know, the 3 pillars that you are talking about, and like which forms the basis of sustainable weight loss, sustainable well-being for busy professionals, essentially.
So here's what I will say to that. Your well-being is like a tripod. There's 3 legs to it. What happens to a tripod? We have one right in front of us. What happens to a tripod when even just one of the legs is weaker than the others?
Falls.
It just falls down. Now, the reason why most busy professionals are constantly struggling to achieve the results that they would like to is because they're too focused on one, maybe 2, but never all 3 pillars. They're always underestimating the importance of taking care of all 3 at the same time. There isn't a one rule or a one magic pill or a one secret that will help you to achieve your greatest level of health, fitness, and well-being. There is a number of things that work together which will help you get there. In fact, what we say to our shifters is 99% of what you think are food problems are actually focus problems. The 3 pillars are focus, food, and fitness. The focus pillar, which is anything to do with your mindset and with your motivation and with your mindfulness, is the most fundamental one, is the one that underpins everything and anything. And so if you're not achieving good results on your nutrition, most of the time, in my experience, is because you're not taking care of your focus. You're not working on the mindset level, on the motivation level. So you end up sabotaging yourself without even realizing.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. The next question is also very important because it's related to sleep. So Zoe really wants to know what are some of the foods that she can incorporate into her diet to help her with sleep, with insomnia. Maybe you can share some of the secrets to better sleep.
So really, the one thing that came to my mind, which is a very well-known thing, is chamomile tea. And in general, herbal teas before bedtime tend to be very good for helping to relax and unwind. And chamomile tea has got very good properties, like sleep conducive properties. What I would say when it comes to sleep is that, in my experience, most of the time it's not about taking something in, it's about losing some of the things that you're taking in that is going to help with your sleep patterns. So avoiding refined sugars, avoiding caffeine past lunchtime, and even if you are having caffeine before lunchtime, how many coffees are you actually having? You know, sodas and caffeinated drinks. You'd be surprised. Caffeine is a little bit like sugar. It creeps in to a number of different things, and you might be taking way more in than you think that you are. So any product that contains caffeine, you need to cut down on if you're struggling with sleep, or ideally eliminate. And refined sugars are really bad for sleep because they kind of stimulate the nervous system. Chocolate is also a stimulant, so if you're having a little bit of chocolate before going to bed, that's not a great idea. I love chocolate, maybe have it earlier in the day, or maybe start eliminating the other stuff and see what you can get away with. So when it comes to sleep, I've found that actually the problem is not so much something that's missing, it's actually more to do with the things that are there that shouldn't be.
Absolutely.
And also, I have to emphasize, and again we go back to the holistic approach, you know, there might be other things besides from food that you need to be doing that can help you with it. Some relaxation techniques, you know, some yoga. Are you going to do HIIT classes before bedtime? Maybe those stimulate you too much and you need to do them in the morning, and instead the evening practice should be one that's more sleep conducive. Hot baths, like guided meditation. So so just kind of think outside the box and think holistically.
So it's like more about creating a ritual that works for you and trying to eliminate the things that
no
might be
technology in the
stimulating.
bed, you know, there's so much that could be done that doesn't have to do with food, that might be just way more powerful than trying to get a supplement or a substance to do the trick for you.
Absolutely. And we have another very popular question, which is how to stop food cravings.
It's a big one. If I had a magic pill for that, I'd be rich. So, food cravings. So there's a technique I've developed which I call crowding out. So fundamentally, let's go back to talking about why you get cravings first and foremost. The one reason could be that you're not eating enough of the right stuff. So because you're kind of almost always a little bit hungry, if you're not getting enough nutrients in, this is what you need to remember. Your body doesn't think in terms of calories, it thinks in terms of nutrients. It needs to hit a minimum amount of nutrients every day in order to feel satisfied. That's why when you go eat at McDonald's, you can have 3,500 calories and still leave like something is missing, and you could eat the whole meal all over again. The meal is designed to make you want more, but also the meal doesn't contain nearly enough of the micronutrients that you need to survive, so your body is constantly asking for more. So the first most impactful way of reducing cravings is to eat food that are more nutrient dense. Fruit, vegetables, legumes, you know, all the stuff that's as close to its natural form as possible, because then you are getting less calories with more nutrients, the body is less likely to crave. The other thing that I want to point out, which is a very empowering distinction, is certain foods are not meant to be eaten in moderation. They trigger your neural pathways in such a way that will cause you to crave it and will cause you to overeat it. And I have another book to recommend on this subject, which is called The Pleasure Trap by Dr. Lyle, and which explains exactly how this works on a neurological level. So for as long as you keep eating those foods, you're going to keep craving them, and you're going to keep overeating them. So actually, sometimes the solution is not to have less, is to not have them at all. Maybe go through a little bit of a period of cleansing where you are retraining your taste buds so that they forget the memory of that taste that really literally, like, you know, refined sugar is as addictive as drugs, and this has been scientifically proven to trigger your certain responses in that way. So those are kind of the suggestions that I have on the subject of cravings. The cleaner you eat, the cleaner you're going to want to eat. So you just get progressively more and more healthy, and you'll see that some of the cravings will disappear. Make sure you're getting enough calories, make sure that you're getting enough nutrients in.
Yeah, thank you so
Sure, my
much
pleasure.
about that. would you say that keeping a food diary would
Very
help
important.
to
We go back to the same
understand?
thing. We tend to underestimate what we're taking in. We tend to forget. We tend to brush under the carpet. So that definitely helps. And it helps with the focus pillar. Again, 99% of your food problems are focus problems. So sometimes a craving needs a little bit of work on the focus pillar for you to really identify what it is that you're craving. Is it really the food that you're craving?
Thank you so much. I will go to the next question, which is from Melissa. And Melissa is asking how to figure out the right amount of food to eat to fuel your body, and how much of each macro is right.
Again, there isn't a one-size-fits-all answer to this question. So it is really important, as much as it's important to use some guidelines and some benchmarks to get started, it's also really important for you to develop what I call mindful eating, which is this approach whereby you're paying attention to how the food is making you feel before, during, and after. So that you learn more and more, because your body is telling you all that you need to know all the time. It's sending you the signals. It's just that we're not trained to interpret those signals. The more you get attuned with your body's signals, the more you'll be able to realize what food works for you. Was that enough? Did I need more? The macro split, it kind of really depends what kind of food plan you are choosing to follow. I follow a whole food plant-based, unprocessed, not added oil, sugar, or salt at the moment, and because this is what has worked for me so far, and what I tend to recommend to our shifters because I've seen the greatest results. And the split with that one tends to be 80% carbs, 10% protein, 10% fat, roughly speaking. Here's what I want to say about macros. The reason, if you haven't achieved your greatest level of health, fitness, and well-being, the reason is very likely to have nothing to do with the macros. We tend to kind of get distracted with these very specific conversations about the macro split. And I'm not saying that the macro split is not important. However, if you're eating junk food, if you're snacking too much, if you're still eating animal products, it's not a matter of macros. It's a way more simpler solution, actually, that would make the greatest difference. I've seen people get so obsessed with macros and with tracking and with apps and with weighing that they're either all or nothing. So you're either following this really strict plan where you're having to weigh everything and calculate everything and track everything and become obsessed with it, or you're eating anything inside because who cares? I've ruined my macros for the day anyways, so I might as well binge, you know. And it doesn't help, you know. So don't get overly obsessed with the macros. Just eat healthy. Look at the food as a whole and eat as healthy as possible. If you're not an athlete, it's not a matter of macros. If you're not, like I am now gonna play with my macros because I'm curious to try a plant-based keto diet to see if and how it may work, and if I may recommend it to some of our clients, because like I said, everybody's different. And so I'll be tracking my macros when I do that and kind of playing around with it for research purposes, and to experiment and see and test and trial. But I don't go around, generally, now that I found my balance, I wouldn't go around like calculating my macros, because that's obsessive compulsive, and it actually tends to do the opposite of what we're trying to achieve.
As you mentioned before, that finding this thing that works and that becomes a second nature is essential to achieve a true transformation, not just a temporary change.
Who wants to weigh their food and track everything and calculate everything? I'm like, who can live like that? I mean, if you're a professional athlete competing for the Olympics, you might have a team that does that for you, because every little second counts and every little way that you can get a competitive advantage over the other. But you know, in the day-to-day life of professionals, that's not the answer, I don't find, anyways, in my experience with our clients.
Thank you, Serena. We have come to our last question, which is from Chelsea. And Chelsea is asking what foods are best for those with hypothyroid and large body types, petite but big bone.
Yeah, so Chelsea, please don't take this the wrong way, but I need to dispel the big boned myth, because there is no such thing. Yes, we're all different sizes and shapes, but the composition of your bones or the size of your bones, even if you were to be different from somebody else's, it would not be detectable to the eye. You know, if they take an X-ray of me and a woman that weighs 10 times what I weigh, the bones would look the same on the X-ray, pretty much. So there is no such thing as big bones. There are different sizes, shapes, and some people carry their weight in different parts of their body. But if you're carrying excess weight, you're carrying excess weight. It has nothing to do with your bones, and with your bone structure. The reason why I'm emphasizing this is not to make anybody feel bad. It's quite the opposite. It's to empower you. Because the moment you start attributing your weight to your bones, you're losing all the power. Are you ever going to be able to change your bone structure? Is any way of eating ever going to be able to give you smaller bones? So you're losing all the power. You're literally giving power to something that you have absolutely no ability and capabilities to ever affect. You know, so inevitably you will self-sabotage because you'll be like, oh, it's because I have big bones. So what's the point? You know, so if you're overweight, it's not to do with your bones, it's to do with excess fat that you're carrying, and that you can affect. That's fully in your control. Are you ever going to be able to look like Jennifer Lopez? No, because we don't all have that body shape and that body form. So unless you had down the plastic surgery route, and even then there'll be limitations. So you have to embrace who you are, for sure, and realize that it's not about comparing with others, it's about being your best self, and that will look different from person to person. But don't get sidetracked and distracted by things that actually don't matter, like the size of your bones. Hypothyroidism can be pretty severe. Like I said, our hormones regulate everything. So if it is an actual diagnosed syndrome, then you need a doctor to help you with that, and because you know it's not to be underestimated. However, we revert back to the conversation about hormones. You know, if you're struggling with hormonal problems, which any thyroid problem would be a hormonal problem, you need to ditch dairy and eggs, and ideally all animal products, but in particular, and first and foremost, dairy and eggs, and never look back. Because they contain so much hormones that they will inevitably disrupt your hormone balance. And you know, like we were saying, you need to go back to your green leafy vegetables, nuts, kale, soy, unprocessed soy, very important distinction. There's a whole bunch of very fun soy products out there these days. The soy that's good for you is organic and unprocessed. Edamame beans, natural tofu, and tempeh, and miso, and that kind of stuff.
Thank you so much. And I just have a follow-up question, because I have always been wondering about this. Is there such thing as skinny fat? Can a person look skinny with the clothes on but still be actually obese?
Well, no, you wouldn't be obese. Obesity has to do with your BMI. You know, so you need to weigh a certain amount in order to be obese. Can you be skinny and healthy? Yes, most definitely. And in fact, I always say to our shifters, the worst curse in your life is a fast metabolism. And I mean that, because if you could get away with eating all the junk in the world without ever putting on weight, you're very likely to do that. And many people do. You know, my husband is a good example. He's very ripped, and he's always looked really good. But before he met me, he wasn't eating a particularly good diet for a number of reasons. You know, he was just very busy, and he could simply get away with not eating particularly well. And he's come a very, very long way. However, here's the thing: you can't outrun a bad diet. It doesn't matter how fast you go. It doesn't matter how good you look. It doesn't matter how much you exercise. Sadly, what tends to happen is that if a bad diet doesn't affect you immediately through weight gain or other more aesthetic issues, you then kind of get away with it until it'll start affecting you as chronic disease later on in life. And that's why even people who on paper are fit and healthy can die prematurely of heart disease. And that's because, you know, the arteries are clogged up from all the cholesterol, and you don't see that from the outside. They have a six-pack, but they're still unhealthy, and they get a heart attack and they're gone. So the short answer is no, you can't be skinny fat, you can be skinny and unhealthy.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your insights.
Sure.
So this concludes our Q&A. Thank you, Serena, so much for joining us and for your insightful answers. And thank you everyone that are watching. Best of luck with your challenge. We really hope that you achieve your fittest, healthiest, and most confident selves.
You can
Thank
really kick things start in 7 days. So
Absolutely.
best of luck.
Absolutely, and we are going to link Serena's details in the
Absolutely.
description. So those of you that want a bespoke program and want to find out more about Serena's programs, what she does, you will find the information in the description box below. Thank you guys.
Ciao for
Bye.
now.